Hey, how's it going? And welcome back to Consuming Cinema, a show about making and pairing food and drinks from popular movies and TV shows. This week, we're making and pairing Shabu Shabu with Suntory from Lost in Translation. If you haven't seen Lost in Translation, it's a 2003 romantic drama written and directed by Sophia Coppola, which won her the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay, and follows Bob Harris, a washed-up American actor visiting Tokyo to film a series of ads for the real-life Japanese whiskey brand Suntory.
For relaxing times, make it Suntory time.
And there, Bob meets and instantly falls for a young woman named Charlotte, who is feeling equally isolated in Japan, having been left alone by her preoccupied and inattentive photographer husband. Bob and Charlotte become fast friends, and over the course of the story, we see them partake in a number of drinks, as well as a plethora of different Japanese cuisine. But the meal we're talking about today is actually the last one that Bob and Charlotte share together, where they dine on a classic Japanese hot pot dish called Shabu Shabu, an experience which they do not enjoy nor respect nearly as much as they should.
That was the worst lunch.
So bad. What kind of restaurant makes you cook your own food?
As I mentioned, Shabu Shabu is a type of hot pot, or in Japanese, a nabe mono, also simply known as a nabe. And to make any nabe, you'll need a donabe, which is a small to medium-sized pot like this one, which I bought on eBay. If you don't have a donabe or can't find one, any small pot or Dutch oven should suffice. You're also going to need some kind of big bowl to put all of your hot pot ingredients into, the first of which is going to be some udon noodles, which we'll simply prepare according to the instructions on the back of the package. We will then cool these hot noodles in an ice bath before straining them and setting them aside. The next ingredient we're going to need is going to be a head of Napa cabbage, which we'll chop into half and then chop into quarters and then chop those quarters into chunks, like so. Next, we're going to need some Shungiku, which is an edible chrysanthemum, also known as crown daisy, and we'll roughly chop our Shungiku and add it to our bowl. Then we're going to add some Negi, which is a long green onion commonly found in Japanese cuisine. And for now, all we're going to use is the whites of the Negi, which we'll add to the bowl, reserving the greens for later. Next, we'll prepare the first two of three different types of mushrooms for our Shabu Shabu: Enoki Mushrooms and Shimeji Mushrooms, both of which we'll cut the bottoms off of and place into our bowl. Then we're going to add our third type of mushroom, Shiitake Mushrooms. And for these shiitakes, you want to first cut out the bottom before then cutting a little flower or star pattern onto the top with a paring knife like so. This is a cutting technique called hanagiri. And after your mushrooms look all pretty, next you're going to need some tofu. I used medium firm, but you could also use firm as well. And you want to strain this tofu completely and then cut it into small rectangular cubes like so. Next, we're going to chop up a carrot into half-inch circles, before then using this flower-shaped vegetable cutter to make little flower-shaped carrots. You could also do this by hand using a similar hanagiri technique as we did the shiitake mushrooms. Then you want to use these little carrot flowers to garnish our little pieces of tofu. Then to the bowl we will add our cooked and cooled udon noodles. And now that all these ingredients are ready, onto a separate plate we will prepare our meat, which is around a pound of thinly sliced beef. The Japanese markets I went to for this episode actually have beef that's pre-prepared for shabu shabu. Similarly, these markets often have pre-cut nabe sets of vegetables that you can buy to make this entire process a lot easier and much more affordable. So we'll just lay our beef down on the plate, and speaking of plates, we'll now need a hot plate, which we'll use to cook our shabu shabu. Then we'll set our donabe on the hot plate and fill the donabe with water. If you don't have a hot plate, you could totally do this over the stove, but just keep in mind that probably means you'll be standing over your stove eating the final product. After which we are going to create a basic broth by adding a sheet of kombu, which is dried kelp. Now, if you live in the state of California, you might notice a cryptic warning on the back of your kombu. That is because kelp and seaweed retain so many minerals, oftentimes good, that sometimes they have trace amounts of cancer-causing substances like lead. So just add that kombu to our donabe, and I actually switched it out for a smaller piece of kombu that would fit better. And then we're going to turn on our hot plate to medium heat, and we're going to let it come to a near boil. And while we do, we want to prepare a few more ingredients for our shabu shabu, the first of which is the greens from our negi. You can also use chopped green onions here. And to another dish, we'll add a bit of shichimi togarashi, which is a Japanese spice blend made of chili peppers. And then to a small bowl, we're going to add a little bit of gomedare, which is a delicious delicious sesame sauce that you can actually make on your own, but I bought this version, which is very good. And to another bowl, we will add some ponzu, which similarly you could also make on your own. And once your water is just about boiling, we want to remove the kombu and allow that water to come to a boil. And while it does, let's discuss Suntory, which, as I previously mentioned, is a real-life Japanese spirit brand, which, just like in the movie, has in reality been promoted by many famous film personalities, such as Sean Connery, Keanu Reeves, Sammy Davis Jr., as well as legendary directors Akira Kurosawa and Sophia Coppola's own father, Francis Ford Coppola. Now, in the movie, we see Bob is drinking a specific type of Suntory called Hibiki 17, which has actually been discontinued and is very difficult to find a bottle of. But there are still several other types of Hibikis on the market, one of which is this one, Hibiki Japanese Harmony, which is a whiskey blend that I unboxed specifically for this special occasion. That said, Hibiki can still be a little pricey and difficult to find at times. So luckily, Suntory has another more affordable whiskey called Toki. Toki is a lighter version of Suntory whiskey that works particularly well in a classic Japanese cocktail called the Highball. To make a whiskey highball, we'll first need a highball or a Collins glass, to which we'll add a spear of ice, which I actually cut out myself using a large block of ice, but I do not recommend this method. And once we add our spear of ice, you then want to stir the ice around in the glass until the glass is properly chilled. And once the glass is nicely chilled, you want to strain out that excess water. Then we're going to add 2 ounces of Japanese whiskey. Now here's where the process becomes somewhat of a ritual. You then want to stir this cocktail precisely 13.5 times, clockwise. And once you do, we're then going to top off our highball with some seltzer. I like Topo Chico. And after which we'll stir our highball exactly 3.5 more times, before then garnishing with a peel of lemon, the oils of which we'll express over the cocktail like so. Now Hibiki, on the other hand, is a high enough quality whiskey where it should really be drank neat or at the very least on the rocks. So to a rocks glass, we'll add a single cube of ice, and then we'll pour in 2 ounces of our Hibiki. And now it's time to start cooking our Shabu Shabu. So add some of each of our ingredients to our donabe, making sure you get a little bit of everything. Then we're going to cover our donabe and cook these ingredients for about 10 minutes or so.
11 minutes later.
At long last, your Suntory with Shabu Shabu is finally done. Now there's nothing left to do but to taste it. So we'll remove our lid from our donabe, and I also grated up some daikon radish, which will be mixed in with our sauces. Then you want to take a slice or 2 of beef and gently cook it in our broth. And while it cooks for a second, we'll add some togarashi to our gomadare and some of the greens of our negi to our ponzu. Then we'll dip the beef in our sauces and give it a taste. And while I proclaimed last week's dish to be the best thing I've ever made on this show, we may already have a new winner. This meal is absolutely outstanding. It is subtle and delicate in its flavors and a total umami bomb. I also want to give a shout out to the channel Just One Cookbook for teaching me everything there is to know about shabu shabu. So check out her channel here as well as the link down below. And make sure to get some of those udon noodles, which really don't need any more cooking and are best dipped into the broth and then into the sauce. Shabu shabu is also a meal best shared with guests, like your very patient fiance who has been waiting all night to eat it. But how does our shabu shabu pair with Suntory? Well, first let's try out our highball, and the best way to describe my reaction to this refreshing and delicious cocktail is a lot like Sammy Davis Jr.'s reaction to Suntory whiskey.
Suntory.
And of course, we have to give our Hibiki a taste as well. And I gotta say, that is really one of the best whiskeys I've ever had. It is remarkably smooth. It's got a bit of a scotch-like quality to it, but it's sweeter and has a lot more depth of flavor. And its subtle, nuanced flavors go perfectly with that of shabu shabu. Speaking of shabu shabu, if at any point during the cooking process there's too much residual fat on your broth, simply skim it off the top like so. So it goes without saying that this meal is phenomenal and is one of the best things we've ever made on the show, and really is best shared with others. So obviously, it's not just worthy of 2, but actually more like 4 thumbs up. If you like the channel, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Please leave any video suggestions in the comments below. Full recipes will be included in the link in the video description. Follow us on all forms of social media at Consuming Cinema. And don't forget to join us next week when we make a pairing from Saturday Night Fever. Thank you for watching.